I'm going to call the meeting to order. Are you ready, Bill?
Yeah, you may start.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask everybody to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag, of the United States of America,
to the republic for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice
liberty and
for all.
justice for all.
And also ask for silence, particularly for the deceased Capitol police officers that died either in the line of duty or shortly thereafter. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Bill, is there anybody who's waiting for public comment?
There are members of the public here. If you would be interested in speaking, press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on the phone, you may press *9. Mr. Chairman, doesn't look like anybody is interested in speaking at this time.
Okay, we're going to close the public comment at this time. The next item on the agenda is approval of the December 15, 2020 Special Police Commission meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a second. We have a second. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing no discussion, we'll go to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Any abstentions? No abstentions. At this time, I make a motion that we move from new business item step 1 grievance 20. Oh, use my glasses. Huh?
Step 2.
20-05.
Excuse me, Chairman,
Yes.
it's step 2 grievance, not step 1.
So I'm sorry, step 2 grievance, union grievance 20-05. I'm making a motion to move it to the forward in the agenda. Do I have a second? We have
I'll
a second.
second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. This is the matter hearing regarding Sergeant Matthew Perkowski, second step grievance. At this time, I'm going to ask our HR Director, Attorney Tom McCarthy, to explain the second step grievance process to everyone. Attorney McCarthy will be acting as the advisor to the commission throughout the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Commissioner, before you start, Tom, I'm sorry to cut you off,
Yep, good.
but I believe we should move to executive session for personnel matters.
Yeah, I think before I was just going to do an overview of what the second step grievance is, and then I think the chair was going to ask if you wanted open or closed right after that. So I'm assuming you want it closed?
Okay.
John, you're breaking up for me. Anybody else?
You're freezing on my end.
Shoot. We clearly need him not freezing. So before we can go forward.
John, can you hear us?
What's the question, Floyd?
I think the question, well, first of all, Mr. McCarthy was just going to do an overview of the process is what he was saying, and then was going to ask you whether the grievant wanted this in open or public session.
Well, that's fine.
Okay, but John, you're freezing a bunch. So can you hear everything we're saying to you?
Yes.
You can. Okay. Okay. So you may want to. I mean, this is up to you. You may want to turn your video off as long as you can hear and hear us and we can hear you. I think that would might work better for your Wi-Fi because your Wi-Fi seems to not be working so well.
Can you hear us okay, John?
I can hear you.
You can hear. Okay.
We'll blame the.
Okay.
Okay. So John, you can hear us and we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. If at any point you can't hear us, just somehow let us know, and then I guess you can put a thing in the chat, and we'll see that. and we'll stop because you have to be able to obviously participate fully here. We want that to
Mr. McCarthy, the best way to do that is to click the raise hand button at the bottom of his screen. The
Okay.
chat.
Okay, John, did you catch that?
I did.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
good.
Okay, so just briefly, there has been a discipline given against Sergeant Prokowski, and that discipline is being challenged it's already been challenged at step 1, and it is being appealed up to step 2, and according to the contract. Step 2 is the police commission. The purpose of this is for the police commission to make a determination, up or down, or whether they agree with or will dismiss the grievance. That is their determination based on what they will hear tonight and previous documents that have been provided to them. The chair will, I believe, go over what documents they had before them, just so that the public knows what they've used for their decision-making. The first question that will be asked, it is the right of the sergeant to have an open or closed hearing. And so that will be the first question asked, and that will determine how we go forward. If it's public, it will remain right here. If it is a private one, we will move into an executive session in another room, and only people that are allowed to be in there, as determined by the chair of the police commission, will be allowed to go into the executive session. Just for the public's view, the town case will be put on by Attorney Floyd Dugas, and the union's case, I believe, John, you're going to put it on, right? Will be put on by John Miller,
Yes.
who is the representative of the police union. So, Ray, if you want to go forward and ask officially if he wants open or closed session.
Yes, so John, acting for Sergeant Prokowski, I'm asking whether you want this grievance to be heard in public session or executive session.
The union will make the request that both grievances be moved to executive session.
Okay, then I make a motion that we go into executive session for the purposes discussing the 2 union grievances, essentially both involving Sergeant Matthew Prokowski, the other involving process that was in place for this particular grievance. So I'm going to ask that the commissioners, obviously, the chief, Assistant Chief Burns, Attorney Dugas, and Attorney McCarthy all be in the executive session, along with Vivian, who will be taking minutes.
There will be
Chief,
there are no
Deputy-
minutes. Sorry, there are no minutes in executive
Correct.
session.
no minutes. Well, when we come out. So Vivian will not be in the executive session. Deputy Chief Cinto, however, will be in the executive session, along with Sergeant Prokowski, John Miller. Is there anybody else, John, that you want in the executive
Capo-
session from the union?
Capola there?
Yes, and Officer Prokowski's here
And
too. Sergeant Prokowski's here.
Yes, I said that. Sergeant Prokowski, Sergeant
Union
Capola,
President Capola.
and John Miller. Is anybody else?
Vice President Kyle Lavins is here also.
Vice President Kyle Lavin as well. Okay, I can see him on the screen.
Excuse me,
All right.
Chairman,
Yes,
can I just go over the list of your executives?
sure, let's go.
I
ahead.
have the chief, Assistant Chief Burns, Attorney Dugas, Mr. McCarthy, Attorney Miller, Detective Lavin, Sergeant Prokowski, Sergeant Capola, Deputy Chief Cinto, Commissioner Magliocco, Commissioner Treves, Commissioner Rosano, and yourself, Chairman Baldwin, correct?
That sounds about right. Anybody I'm missing?
Chair, just one clarification. We're going in for both 20-03 and 20-05.
That's correct.
May I ask what, Tom, I'm only aware of the one. What is the second one about? I just want to make sure it's appropriate for executive session.
Chief, you want to answer that one?
It's a grievance from the union about notice of investigation. Basically, when an officer is accused of something and there's an internal affairs investigation, what is given to the officer as a notice of investigation? In other words, are they just being told that they're going to be interviewed, or do they get details of the complaint in the notice of investigation? and there's a difference of opinion on how that works and what a citizen complaint form actually is.
All right, if it doesn't involve specifically Sergeant Perkowski's performance, and it is more of a contract interpretation issue, I do not believe it is appropriate for executive session. And I would suggest, to the extent it doesn't involve discussing anybody's performance, including Sergeant Perkowski, that one be held actually in public session.
Good point. Point.
That is a good point. Yep.
Okay. Which one of those is it? 20-03?
That's 2003 is notice of investigation.
All right. Then for modifying the motion so that step 2 union grievance 20-03 will not be discussed in executive session. That will be discussed in open session. Okay. So having modified the motion, I'd like the commission to vote on going into executive session with the parties named for purposes of step 2 grievance, union grievance 20-05. I make a motion to do that. Second.
Second.
We have a second. All commissioners in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. We will go into executive session. And the union's on, correct? Yeah.
Correct. The union is here.
And Vivian, are you taking minutes?
Yes, I am. I just need you
Okay.
to make a motion to exit executive session.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we exit executive session at 6:54 PM. Do we have a second? We have a second, Commissioner Maglioka. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any objections? No objections? Okay, we're out of executive session and we are now back in our regular session. The next item on the agenda will be a step 2 grievance, union grievance 20-03. Chief, will you be presenting this grievance?
And
Chief is
again,
muted. Chief, you're muted.
just to stick my nose in, if I'm understanding the grievance, and I'm really not familiar with it, if it is a language grievance, which is why we couldn't go into executive session, the union would actually have the burden of going forward.
All right, I stand corrected. Then, John, you have the floor. You can go forward with the step 2 grievance 20-03.
Okay. And I know everyone's aware of the contract that was in place. The language did not change with the new contract that's pending, but it's Article 17, Section 1, subsection A.
Would you recite that again, John? I'm sorry.
Article 17, Commissioner.
Article
Section
17.
1, subsection
Yep.
A.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Section 1, subsection A. And
Got it.
under subsection A, the language is clear. The employee against whom a complaint has been received shall be notified of such complaint by the chief or his designee in writing, accompanied by a copy of the complaint within 15 days of receipt. He never received a copy of the complaint within 15 days of receipt. Now, the complaint was the Shelton Police Report.
You guys
The
all hear
language is
okay?
clear. It's beautiful what it says.
It's breaking up. Or I can hear.
John, I think we'd be best
Being
if you
said.
just went strictly to audio and didn't try the video portion. It's not coming through.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So I'll just say my last sentence. I think that's what got jammed up. Is the language is clear that he will receive a copy of the complaint within 15 days from the receipt. The copy of the complaint is the Shelton Police Report. It was never received within 15 days. Now, if they want to say complaint form, as it says in the contract, a form was never given to him either. The department never filled out a complaint form and provided it to him. And if the department states they don't have one, well, then they're in violation of the contract because they should have one. It's cut and dry. We've never received it. And that's why the grievance was filed within the 15 days. That's all I have.
Chief, do you want to respond to that statement?
Sure.
No.
So the contract reads, and I'll read it, Section 1, subsection A, employees against whom a complaint has been received shall be notified of such complaint by the chief or his designee in writing. Lieutenant Allen sent the employee, in this case, a notice of investigation. And then it says accompanied by a copy of the complaint form within 15 days of receipt. The complaint form, a complaint form is a complaint form that a citizen would make out for any complaint that somebody made out. Now, we took it upon ourselves to conduct an internal affairs investigation based on the information provided to us by the Shelton Police Department. Their report was a criminal ongoing investigation. I know it was said earlier that it was immediately closed out. That is not the case. That is not what I was told by the investigating detective. It went out for, I think, at least a week, where the complainant victim in this particular case changed her mind as to whether she wanted to follow through with criminal investigation. And that's actually, I believe, in the Shelton Police Report. So the Shelton Police Report is forwarded to us. I order an internal affairs investigation. It's an internal complaint. It's my complaint to internal affairs saying, I want this investigated. And that's basically it. I don't fill out citizen complaint forms. I don't fill out complaint forms. I order the Internal Affairs Division to conduct an investigation. It's an internal complaint based on the information I learned from Shelton. And in this particular case, which was grieved, was the union asked for a copy of Shelton's police report. I am not giving anybody an ongoing criminal investigation from another department, because then I've made it public. And I don't have the ability to do that with an outside agency's police report. I'm not going to allow what we do or what others may do affect the outcome of a criminal investigation that they may have. I'm not going to do that to another agency, and I wouldn't do it to, I wouldn't expect it to be done to my agency as well. So that's really about it. I don't really have much else to say.
All right, so it's safe to say that the victim in this matter never made a civilian complaint to the Trumbull Police Department. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was based on my internal complaint to the Internal Affairs Division.
Okay.
Commissioner, can I counter that for a second, please?
Go ahead, John.
Okay, if you go to section 1, right above that, in the first sentence, it says the following procedures shall be followed by the department in the event departmental disciplinary action is complained against an employee as a result of an internal or civilian complaint. They don't get to pick and choose when they want to use the complaint form. It's clear, black and white per the contract.
But a civilian complaint is something that a civilian makes out. An internal complaint, yes, they get what the lieutenant in internal affairs sends to the officer. I know it does read that in the event departmental disciplinary action is contemplated against an employee as a result of an internal or civilian complaint. I would have given him a copy of a complaint form if one existed. One does not exist.
Then you're in violation of the contract.
Not if I don't make out.
And one second point I need to bring up, the chief hit on it during his thing, Commissioner, is that in section 1A, he refers to the complaint form being civilian complaint form. I do not see the word civilian there. It just says complaint form. And if we refer back to section 1, which I just brought up, states internal and civilian complaints. These procedures will be followed, that a form will be handed. That's all I have, Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, anything further, chief?
No, it's just that a complaint form does not exist. There was no complaint form made by somebody from the outside. The complaint form is my order to Internal Affairs to conduct an investigation.
Okay.
That's the complaint. I'm the complainant in this case.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps that up. Commissioners, you have any questions? If you do
No,
not,
I don't have any. Thank you.
thank you. All right, I'm going to conclude the grievance. Again, as we said in the previous one, we have 30 days in which to render a decision and send notice to the union, which we will do. Okay, thank you. We're going to go back.
Thank you, commissioners, for your time.
Thank you. We're going to go back to our agenda and start back with correspondence. Chief, do you have correspondence?
Yes, just give me one moment, please. The first letter of correspondence is a thank you note to Officer Murphy, who helped an injured Trumbull High School employee into work one day during I believe it was a snowstorm we had where she had to get into work and the person had an injured foot. So she just wanted to thank Officer Murphy for helping her. The next is a lunch which was sponsored by the Fairfield County Trauma Response Team for the officers of the department. And you'll see one of the person who brought in the food and one of our sergeants and one of our patrol officers. Moving forward, you'll see another lunch provided to the officers. In mid-December, from a resident supporting the officers, they delivered snacks, lunch, and treats for our K-9. And then there's some other correspondence, somebody from Oregon who had asked for a patch. We mailed her some police memorabilia. It was a child, so we sent the challenge coin and a police patch and some other patch memorabilia. And then there's a picture of her holding it. The next letter is from the Police Officer Standards Training Council for Officer Hatsis. She completed her training through post, and now she is in field training. It basically says that she graduated and she needs to complete field training. And she would then be, if she successfully completes that, she will be a certified police officer. The same letter exists in your packet for Officer Singh, who completed the post and graduated the theoretical portion, and now both officers are in field training. The next letter is a letter I sent to Lieutenant Weir. I did speak about this at our, no, I didn't speak. I communicated with the commission about the robbery shooting that occurred inside the mall shortly before Christmas at the end of November. So I did inform the commission in December. It's a letter of commendation from myself to the lieutenant for his outstanding work. This is another letter of thanks to some of our officers who helped a woman and her mom who had fallen at Kohl's. Officer McEnany and Singh actually saw her fall, so they went to her aid, and the resident was just happy with the way the officers responded. The final letter of correspondence is an email from myself to Lieutenant Jones, Officer Mazza, Dispatcher DeSanti, thanking them for the way they handled a notification of a deceased person who has relatives in Florida, and it was a bit confusing because there were other members of a family calling, and they handled it really well. So we got a call, the email the next day thanking the officers. If we move on to calls for services, you'll see that we had 1,328 calls in the month of December. For the year, we are up over 600 additional calls throughout the year, just over 21,000 compared to 20,765 last year. Traffic stops in the month of December were 118, slightly, actually a little more than slightly up from November, 72 to 118. But as you can see, year to date, we're down. We're about half the stops we were last year. And I attribute most of that to the COVID situation. Next page is the calls for services. There were 78 in the month of December, when referring to larceny, shoplifting, motor vehicle theft, burglaries, thefts from vehicles, and our total criminal cases were 78 in the month of December, and we were up about 140 additional cases this past year. Then we have down below, we have total alarms, 108 for the year, down just about 450 alarms for the year. The next 3 pages, just a detail of the types of calls, a breakdown of the calls, the 1,328 calls we had for the month. And it just lists each call, as you see this every year. It listed how many calls for each case they went on. And then we have our school resource officer reports, Officer Bartosik, who is at Madison Middle School, Officer Duva, who is at the high school, and Officer Fedorowicz, who is at Hillcrest School. After that, you will find Officer Carlson's K-9 report for K-9 Rico for the month of December. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring this to the commission's attention. I know I emailed you, but our retired K-9 Storm was put to rest this past Friday. Officer Lee found out that he had terminal illness and decided to put him to sleep. We held a procession and an escort for Storm and Officer Lee last Friday afternoon. So Storm put several years of good work in for our department, and we wish him and we wish Officer Lee, who now has another K-9, moving forward with that. There's no report from Officer Lee this month. After that, there's 5 pages of 25 adult arrests in the month of December. Then the traffic report. As you can see, there were 43 cases that the traffic division took in the month of December. Motor vehicle complaints, motor vehicle stops, car seat installations, funeral escorts, and putting the speed trailer in certain locations throughout the town. After that are just something that we sent to our patrol division for traffic issues and complaints so they can do selective enforcement throughout the town. Then after that, we have the detective division report. They have 31 open cases. They took in 10 new cases this month. They've been pretty busy. They are working hard, not just locally, but throughout the region and throughout the tri-state area. They're working on some really significant cases that I'm very proud of the work that Detective Lavin, Sergeant Pires, and the other detectives that are in there doing. They're doing a lot of good work. And then the monthly statistics reports. It's kind of a breakdown of the cases that they worked on and the call outs that they may have gone to. There were 16 cars entered in the month of December, 5 stolen cars. We recovered 4 of them. And then I would, just hold on one moment, please. You'll see at the end of your packet in the detective division, there's a news release from the United States Attorney's Office, District of Connecticut, regarding a Bronx man who was indicted in his alleged role in car thefts. And we were heavily and deeply involved in that case. Theft of more than 40 cars in Connecticut, New York, and elsewhere, millions of dollars in stolen cars. And if Assistant Chief Burns would like to add a little bit more to that, he knows more about the case than I do, overseeing the Detective Bureau.
I would add that this is a noteworthy case in that it developed from a single stolen car that was recovered by our department. And then by the investigation and the initiative of our detectives, both Sergeant Pires and primarily Detective Lavin, in developing a variety of information that followed from that case and uncovered a major stolen car ring, which is still ongoing by the FBI. This release here details one arrest that was made of one of the individuals responsible for stealing the cars. In the final paragraph, you see that our department is noted, but it's much more prominent than that, and that the entire case was developed through our department. So I give the detectives tremendous credit for initiating this case, and I'm sure we will be talking about this again when it comes to, when it culminates.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a lot of hard work on Detective Lavin and Sergeant Pires' end in this investigation. They really dug in and worked hard. They're very tenacious, and I'm very proud of the work they did in this case. Next report is the training division's report. As you can see, some of the training was canceled, where some of it was held online. You know, we lost a good 10 months of training in this last year. Everything, pretty much everything was canceled. So there was no in-person training. We did do some departmental training. There's some online training, but we really, and not just Trumbull, everybody, everything was pretty much, as you all know, and even in your worlds, you know, a lot of things came to a standstill. So we're hoping in the next couple of months that we can get back on track with this and continue to train our officers as much as we can. And not just what we want to do, but the police accountability bill that was passed in late July is going to require us to do a lot of retraining because just of the way things have changed for duty to intervene, duty to report cases, use of force. We're going to have to retrain all of our officers. Every single one of them is going to have to go to training for this. They're going to have to be vetted vendors. There's going to have to be trainer-trainer sessions. It's going to be costly to every municipality. We don't have a choice. We need to follow it. We have to follow it, and we want to. And you know, aside from that, there's a tremendous amount of liability if we don't. So it's something that we're really working hard on, pulling things together and doing as much training as we can in-house because we have a little more flexibility, and it might save us a few dollars here and there on overtime and so forth, but it has to be done unless there's some change with the legislature on some of these laws. But I tend to think that they're pretty much going to stay the way they are, at least for the time being. And while I'm talking about that, we also have other requirements for our officers' recertifications that the assistant chief may touch on when we get to the budget process of the meeting that are required by us through the law. The police cadet reports, they had a couple of meetings for some of the things that they're doing. Officer Fedor, who oversees the program, is looking to restructure the program so we can get more people, more students, more youth involved in the Trumbull Cadets. And we're looking at possibly working with EMS and fire to attract more people to the program. The sick and injury report, as you can see, the last 2 months of the year, we had quite a bit of sick time. Much of that pertains to quarantining because of the pandemic. At one point we had, I believe, 11 people out who were required to quarantine for about 14 days because of exposure or because they were positive with the COVID virus. So we don't take it lightheartedly, and we do contact tracing. If somebody is exposed and we have to quarantine people, we quarantine them. The budget is in the next packet. I'll just mention briefly, I'm going to have Assistant Chief Burns really talk about this. Currently in the year, we are just right about where we should be for the year. We are running a little bit over in the salary line because of the increases that the officers got. There were 3 years of pay raises, or 2, that went into this budget that we didn't know and we weren't able to budget for it. So it's eating up more of the payroll than would have been expected. So I'll let Assistant Chief Burns talk to the budget, what we're going to propose for the current year moving forward for July 1st, and what our thoughts are. Assistant Chief.
Thank you, Chief. We have 3 pages of budget documents in your materials. The first being the current fiscal year, and the second two being our proposal for the next fiscal year starting July 1. On the first page in the balance sheet, this is the same table that I show you monthly. This is the 50% progress sheet for the end of December. And on the positive note, we are very close to where we should be at barely over the 50%. What's different from previous years is an imbalance between all the accounts due to the unusual circumstances and the situation that we've had over the past year with the virus and shutdowns and the changes in the way we're doing our work now. The other big difference is the union contract that was settled for two different unions just last year after this current year's budget was approved, resulted in several pay raises, which are reflected starting with this current year. So although the figures are from 2 years ago, we're paying current rates and therefore overdrawing the account. On the positive side, due to the imbalance that I described, I expect that we will make out in good shape by the end of the year. Without any specific questions, I'll turn your attention to the second and third pages. The second table is a summary of our proposal for the coming year. No specific major increases alone, but there are two noteworthy items that should attract your attention. The first being the salary line, which reflects 3 years of raises. That's why it has a significant percentage reflected there. The second is what the chief referred to with the recent legislation of the Police Accountability Bill, which was passed just this last October. The concern with that bill was that it brought forth a variety of mandates for all police departments in the state, some of which were to take effect immediately and prior to our planning for the next fiscal year. On the last page, the third page that you have, I've detailed some of this specifically. In the third account listed for ancillary, this account includes a variety of testing and other purposes that we normally use during the course of the year for promotions and so forth. The new requirements that this bill has introduced includes two things, two major portions, one of which is drug screening as a requirement for recertification for all our officers. And the second is a behavioral assessment testing or evaluation, more or less, that would be required of every officer on a 5-year basis. This does go into effect immediately, and that will have to be providing the drug screening prior to the start of this proposal, July 1st. And of course, we do not have the funding provided in the current year. We're including it here for next year, and therefore it results in a significant increase in the accounts we have here. The provisions and the details of what's required of us have not been made clear by the state. So we're working on our own presumptions and estimations of what burden this will put on the department. Otherwise, we have not submitted any significant increases or major purchases for the coming year. So the bottom line that you see for totals for the department reflect mostly an increase in the salary line for full-time employees. Any commissioners may be interested in our full publication for our budget proposal. I'd be glad to provide that. I'll be preparing that later this week, and it'll be delivered to the First Selectman's office by next week. I'd be glad to entertain any questions if you have any.
Any commissioners have any questions? Again, great job, Glenn, on putting this budget together as you have over the years. Thank you very much. Anybody?
Absolutely.
No? Okay, thank you.
No question.
Chief?
Hey, I think we have new business. Remaining is the discussion and consideration of Assistant Chief Glenn Burns' contract extension. His contract runs out in May. It allows for the town to, did somebody say something? No?
Nope.
Okay. It allows for the town to extend it from this point on. So I would suggest that we, if there's any discussion about it, that we do that and extend his contract. I have no issues with the way the contract is now. It works for us. I believe it works for him, unless there might be something he might change, which we could talk about. But I think a 5-year contract is warranted.
Yes, I would agree. I think a 5-year contract for Assistant Chief Burns is warranted. He's 35 years on the department, last 17 years, he's been the second in command of the department's deputy chief and assistant chief. He's managed an array of projects, major projects within the police department, communication center, locker room, cell block, firing range, handles the finance and budget for the department, the accreditation, which we just received last year. Police is handling the new police accountability bill, a myriad of responsibilities that he's taken on the operations of the department. And I think he's been certainly a valued asset to the town of Trumbull, the Trumbull Police Department. And I would definitely recommend a 5-year contract extension for him. We will
Make a motion.
Well, does anybody have any further comments? Go ahead.
I want to mute you.
Okay.
That's not going to work. We had too much feedback. I would like to say I'm in agreeing with the 5-year contract extension. As being on the Police Building Commission, Glenn had extensively ran the project of the $2 million renovation. His entire process is very thorough, and he does a great job in anything that he's asked to do. And I agree with your contract, and just keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chuck.
You say it. I make a motion to bring up the contract and take a vote.
Yeah, we have a motion. We have a motion from Commissioner Vazano to extend a 5-year contract to Glenn Burns on terms and conditions to be decided. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second it.
Chris Treves, we have a second. We have multiple seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of an extended contract of 5 years signify by saying aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Congratulations, Assistant Chief Burns.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your support. Well appreciated.
Well deserved.
Okay, we've come to the end of our meeting, one of the longer ones we've had. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All right, Commissioner Vazano made the motion. Al Zamory seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Tom McCarthy, Floyd Dugas, if you're still on, thank you very much for your participation this evening.